And we're back 20 minutes until the top of the hour. Erik Iverson, very patiently waiting there. He's on our newsmaker line this morning. Erik is the state GOP state chair. Erik, you were talking about the 4 planks in this ethics law that you're proposing, and I want to go back to the first one just for a second before you finish that 4th plank.
Sure.
You're talking about requiring financial disclosure of governor and should be his wife, and I agree with that, because so many times you can shuffle paperwork and you get things off in the wife's name and so on. But why don't we include relatives that are working for state government or representing the governor? But what brings me to mind is Walt's activity, Brother Walt, brother of the governor, who was so active in the affairs of state. He wasn't elected; he was appointed. Then that 4th plank reminded me that he's the one that put together that inauguration extravaganza, and I don't think we have an accounting of the money from that yet, do we?
No, we really don't. And you know, they were artful in the way they set up Walter's job there. He's a volunteer in the governor's office, sort of a super intern, if you will. And nobody quite knows how he's been getting paid. Now, we know recently the governor's been paying him to do some political consulting out of his campaign fund, but, you know, there's been a stretch for the last couple of years that's been sort of a mystery as to what he's been doing for income. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, some people have wanted to take a look at this constituency fund. Now, again, I don't know that there's anything necessarily there. If the governor should decide to report what's in his constituency fund, like others have done, he refuses to do so. Nobody's quite sure why, and I'm not making any specific allegations that he's done anything, any misdeeds with those funds. It's just, you know, it's the right thing to do to disclose it. But what's always been interesting about Walter's connection there is it's been very inconsistent on the part of the governor about whether or not he's been paid. Originally, they said that Walter would be taking a commission out of the money that they were raising for the governor's ball, and then they said no, he won't be getting that. He's just going to get paid a straight salary. And then they said, well, no, but he's not getting paid out of the constituency fund. And then the governor has said that he would consider full disclosure of his constituency fund. Then he pulled back and just said, well, I transferred some money from the governor's ball into my slush fund, but I'm not going to tell you, who that money was from, and I'm not going to tell you how it was spent. Then after a little bit of pressure from some reporters, he said, well, about a third of it's been spent on travel for the First Lady. Then the 2007 legislative session starts. Roy Brown, senator from Billings, introduces legislation to ban constituency accounts. Other representatives, both Republicans and Democrats, stepped up with bills to regulate these things. Then the governor all of a sudden said, "Hey, I'm on board. I believe that, you know, we need to have full accountability in these." So the question was, well, are you going to do what Brad Johnson did and actually, you know, release your list of contributors and how you spent your slush fund money? And he said, well, no, about half of my money has gone to travel. So he changed it from a third to now a half, but again, then won't tell anybody what he spent it on. Then in May, late April, May, he goes to the Kentucky Derby. I guess this is in May. He goes to the Kentucky Derby and announces to everyone that his campaign didn't pay for that trip, his constituency account, his slush fund didn't pay for the trip, but the National Democrat Governors Association paid for his trip. So he admits the existence of a slush fund in May, says that the slush fund didn't pay for his trip to the Kentucky Derby. Then in June, he reverses course yet again and tells Montana reporters, well, I haven't had a slush fund in months. So he's bringing all of this on himself, and people can sit back and sort of shoot the messenger here on the part of the Montana Republican Party. But we've been very clear from the beginning on this. The slush funds are wrong, period. They ought to be banned. There is no place for them in Montana politics. And the existing slush funds should have to have full disclosure, retroactive to the day that they were formed, just like Brad Johnson did voluntarily, that our governor still refuses to do. We just think it's the right thing to do, and it doesn't matter. Our rule would apply to Republicans and Democrats because it's the right thing to do, yet the governor is still kicking and screaming and dragging his feet on this thing. And again, it's very likely he's complied with the law. Nobody's making any allegations that he's done anything illegal or unseemly with his constituency fund money. Our point is, we just don't know. The public has a right to know who's trying to influence their elected officials, and for whatever reason, this governor doesn't want the public to know who's been putting money into his slush fund. So we said, you know what? slush funds should be banned, and the public has a right to know who's contributed to it up to this point. Now, I don't see any rational reason to argue against a policy like that.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the problem with those slush funds, and the problem with anything that's not out in the open, is that it gives rise to all kinds of wondering and accusations and curiosity. And generally, when you tear them all down, there was no reason for any of the problem.
No,
it's just that it's kept in secret. But it illustrates perfectly why there should be some transparency in government.
That's right, and I think it's tough a lot of times for the public to know, okay, what are we talking about here? I don't understand these slush funds. I didn't know people could have them. Well, a governor or a secretary of state, for instance, has a reelection fund. And you're limited by law as to how much money you can contribute to Governor Schweitzer's reelection campaign. He has to report. He'd have to say, David Berg, $250. He'd have to report it to the public. He has to say, how he spent that money. Is it on stamps? Is it on cell phones? Is it on advertising? All of that is spelled out clearly in Montana law. But there's also this anomaly that's been created years ago in Montana law that allows for what are called constituency funds, and these are these slush funds. They're completely unregulated. Any of these politicians in Helena can set up a slush fund. All they have to do is file a little piece of paper with the Commissioner of Political Practice saying they've created a slush fund, and that's it. There's no reporting beyond then. David Berg could write a $10,000 check into Governor Schweitzer's slush fund, and Schweitzer wouldn't have to report that he got it, wouldn't have to report how he spent it. There's no limit on it. There's no accountability to the public. There's absolutely no way the public knows who may be trying to influence our elected leaders. And for the life of me, I don't see how or why any elected official would defend or condone the use of one of these slush funds after we now know the way they actually operate. And the Montana Republican Party has taken the lead on the issue. We've said, look, there's a problem here. We're going to step up. We're going to lead. We're going to fix it. The Democrats have had their chance. They've been in power for the last 4 years there. They didn't lead on the issue of openness in government. We're going to do it.
Eric, I got to take another break, and it's a short one. And when we come back, I want to talk about the Montana Republicans presidential caucus coming up February 5th. Some very interesting things about this that are not usual. So we'll take a look at those when we come back. Our telephone number 1-866-627-5483. Erik Iverson, our newsmaker guest this morning. We'll be right back.